something needs to change?
Absolutely. So I had a really specific moment in time that I knew it was time for me to change. And what happened was Tony, we were in San Diego, and in the San Diego offices, Tony brought in a bunch of online marketing experts. And at the time, they were all men. Because back then, 15, 6, this is probably 17 years ago, we didn't have a lot of women doing what I'm doing now. And so it was all men. And he brought them to this big oak table. And if you know internet or online marketing, then you know Frank Kern, Evan Pagan, Brendan Burchard, Jeff Walker. Like these guys are the OGs of online marketing. I had no idea who they were. So he brings them to the table and he wants to talk about how they're growing their businesses because we were getting more into the digital space
Mm.
and he wanted to hear how they were doing it, which is so brilliant of Tony to just say, tell me your ways. And then Tony usually does it better. And so I was brought in to take notes at that meeting. I was the director of content at the time, but everyone can be called in to take notes at any time. So I was called in to take notes. I sat at a table. I wasn't even invited to the main table and I took my notes. But I probably took the worst notes of my life that day because Tony asked a question of these guys. He said, tell me what your businesses look like. And they went around and they didn't talk about the products they sold. And they were in all different markets. So dating, finance, business building, relationships, like all these different areas. But they didn't talk about the products they sold. They talked about the lifestyles that they had,
Mm.
the freedom they had, the time they spent with their family, the vacations they took. They talked about how much they loved what they were doing because what it afforded them. And they did talk about the people they got to serve and the results they got. And in that moment, I thought, I don't even know what these guys are doing, but they are all free. That was one thing I wasn't. I was
Mhm.
never free. I had a really strict father who always called the shots. Then I went to college and then I got jobs. I always had bosses. And then here I was having a very big boss, Tony Robbins, literally and figuratively, that man is big. And so I just in that moment thought, I want to experience what it's like to make my own decisions and
Mm.
make my own money. Like I did realize in that moment that I will always hit a ceiling if I am in corporate, especially as a woman.
Mhm.
And so I knew that I had to be able to go out on my own in order to bust through that. And that's exactly what I did. It took a good year from that meeting for me to get the courage to do it. But it was that meeting with those men that I thought I want a piece of that.
What aspect of that too, as a woman, was motivating to you?
One, that there were no women at that
Yeah.
table. It was scary. So when I think of women of color that never see themselves in the room, I have a lot of compassion for that.